We've reversed now. We're on our 14th case of MS. Our 7th case, Tim, was a Navy lieutenant in charge of the nuclear power plant on a Nimitz carrier and subsequently retires in 2020 and develops loss of vision in his left eye, problems with his right hand, right leg, hallucinations, cognitive inability, anger, emotional volatility. And long story made very short is he gets into our program at 12 weeks. He's 90% better. We gave him one peptide, and between 12 and 14 weeks, he's 100% better. He's been in remission, which is what I call it. We haven't cured him. We put him into remission since November 2023. He's never been on any classical MS medication. We just addressed the neuroinflammation.
Hey, folks, welcome to another special edition of Broken Brains with your host, Bruce Parkman, the official podcast of the Mac Parkman Foundation, where we look at the issue of repetitive brain trauma from two perspectives: repetitive head impacts from contact sports and repetitive blast exposure for our veterans, and what these conditions are doing to the minds, mental well-being, and health of our athletes, children, and our veterans. Why is this important? This is not trained in your doctor and nursing or psychological courses out there making you the front line of defense, and only knowledge is going to help you protect those that you love. On the show today, returning, because we're better than Joe Rogan, Dr. Mark Gordon is on the show today. Mark Gordon is an amazing guy. He's a personal friend. He's been at our summit, and what this man has done in just all areas of trying to help our veterans address these key issues of TBI, neuroinflammation, hormonal imbalance. This man has donated millions of dollars personally to our veterans to ensure they get top-notch care at the lowest potential cost. He's been on Rogan 6, probably 8 times by now. I mean, he was the medical director of CBS Studios 7. Look at that, man. Who's counting? That's almost as many Super Bowl rings as Tom Brady. Oh, God, 6 times, man. But anyways, Mark, welcome back to the show. Can't thank you enough for coming back on. We got a whole bunch of new stuff to talk about,
Absolutely.
Man.
And it's always a pleasure being here because you are, you're driving the recognition of how important subconcussive as well as concussive traumas are in the entire spectrum of age, from our young children, our Pop Warner players, our hockey players, so forth, and our adults, people with crashes, people that I love dearly, our military. I was just with 6 SEALs this weekend in Palm Desert at a charity event, and they weren't aware. They weren't aware of the science that's here that could define why they're having their symptoms and why they don't need to get onto polypharmacy. If you fix the underlying problem, as you indicated, neuroinflammation, if you're able to fix that, mitigate it, stop it, whatever term you want to use, you give them a new playing field where they can start healing. Until that inflammation is resolved, you can't heal. The brain doesn't work that way. The brain chemistry doesn't work that way.
What's horrifying is you just met Navy SEALs. Now, I've been on the U.S. SOCOM, brain health team with under General Fenton. And the fact that, they should know that there's something out there. But there's a big battle right now on whether we tell people or don't tell people. I'm just kind of, at least they should know that the research and science absolutely, it supports the fact that you can be a Navy SEAL and you can keep your brain optimized and you can do your job and you can retire well, but we've got to start taking care of the brain. And that starts right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The sooner the better. The argument in a paper I just released on TBI in the shadow of PTSD. And as you know from our past discussions, I'm not a great supporter of what PTSD is other than a missed opportunity to have treated a TBI. And unfortunately, because the criteria that the military, DOD, the VA has had for the inclusion of someone as a TBI, loss of consciousness, retrograde or prospective amnesia, nausea, vomiting, headache, blurred vision, cognitive impairment, or whatever else that subsides. You can have none of that, as you know, from the subconcussive trauma. You can have nothing immediately, and over the course of time, it grabs you. It's that what is it? That snake that lifts its head above the hole, and all of a sudden you get bitten by it.
Viper.
A viper. A
Yeah.
viper gets you. You know. So it's extremely important to understand that this repetitive head trauma, as you call it, subconcussive, as we know it is, subconcussive, meaning that with concussive traumas, you've had your bell's been rung because you have a change immediately or subsequent to the impact or the trauma in your perception and so forth. But in subconcussive, it doesn't happen immediately. It might happen years down the road, or it might happen 3 weeks. It might have 6 months, whatever. It's all based upon how frequently the impacts are that are sustained. So the key is
no, keep going.
the key is there's a term which is called mechanotransduction, which explains why when the head is just jarred, whether or not it's a sea-doo, skiing, trampoline for our kids, taking the kid and shaking them and shaking child syndrome, that it creates an impact of cell tissue against cell tissue that sends off free radicals. What are free radicals? They are triggers to turn on inflammation in your brain through microglia. So that through whatever kind of trauma, it induces this mechanotransduction that creates the cells called microglia to release these inflammatory cytokines. And we have not had a means of detecting these inflammatory cytokines relative to the brain. I mean, there's SB100, there's glial cell fibrin products. There's all these products that are produced by destruction or damage to the nerves in the brain, as well as there's a marker for the disruption of the blood-brain barrier, which is extremely important for separating the brain's chemistry from our peripheral chemistry. And under trauma, you lose that because the cells that are responsible for protecting it, called astrocytes or astroglia, they're damaged and they lose the ability to keep the protection of the blood-brain barrier. So stuff weeps from the periphery into the brain. And that's what they believe is why people develop multiple sclerosis, because it's, quote, an autoimmune disease. And we've reversed now, we're on our 14th case of MS. Our seventh case, Tim, was a Navy lieutenant in charge of the nuclear power plant on a Nimitz carrier, and subsequently retires in 2020 and develops loss of vision, his left eye, problems with his right hand, right leg, hallucinations, cognitive inability, anger, emotional volatility. And long story made very short is he gets into our program at 12 weeks. He's 90% better. We gave him one peptide, and between 12 and 14 weeks, he's 100% better. He's been in remission, which is what I call it. We haven't cured him. We put him into remission since November 2023. He's never been on any classical MS medication. We just addressed the neuroinflammation. And what we have is a new tool for assessing or addressing all of our military and all of our civilian population who have had trauma of whatever kind. Is we now have a panel, which is a inflammatory panel, and it comes from a facility in Huntsville, Alabama. I Express Genes. One of the co-founders is a colonel in the Army and a Apache helicopter pilot, John and Jeremy, and they were referred to me, or I was referred to them, whatever, and their technology is incredible. It allows us to see 20 markers that are relative to brain function and general inflammation. And then when you treat them, we use our Millennium Protocol. When you treat them, you see the reduction in the inflammation. So we have people that our first test group was a group of SEALs associated with Team 4. And they went through this inflammatory testing and then our 28-point biomarker panel. And then 100 days later, we repeated the inflammatory markers and they were all down and they were all better. In the past, we were assuming, in the papers that I write on neuroinflammation, because I didn't have the technology, the tool we now have, it was based upon how well their brain chemistry improved. But now we have, in addition to seeing the actual improvement in brain chemistry, we have a drop in the inflammation that was causing the problems with the brain. So,
let's go back to the MS guy. So,
okay,
so was he diagnosed with MS, or
he's in
they thought he
Florida.
had MS, or they just
No,
miss it?
he's in Florida. He was diagnosed fully. Tim was at the VA. I forgot if it was Orlando or further south, but he developed the loss of vision in his left eye, his hand and leg problems, and then his personality change. And when they went in there, they found the classical lesions in time and place in the brain, which relate to the plaque formation to MS. And he was diagnosed with it. And they offered him traditional approach for MS. And he said no. And the reason why he said no, he's a smart guy. I'm not sure if he's a nuclear physicist, but he was in charge of, maintenance of the plant on the
Working with nuclear.
yeah.
Right?
I don't know. I didn't go and look at his credentials anyway. And then he left the VA after telling him he didn't want to go on the medication that they were offering, because he said in his assessment that the literature showed that you can die faster being on the medication than just taking your chances with the illness. That's what he said. Okay.
Like
So
all
he
the
gets
MS.
into his car. He gets into his car and he starts driving home from wherever he was in Florida. And he turns on his favorite talk show. I apologize. It was Joe Rogan. At the split
Not
at
him
the
again. Gotta
at
hear
the
about this guy all the
split
time.
second, at the split second that I'm talking to Joe about a Navy SEAL by the name of Nathan, who had been with us for 60 days, and he was 50% better from his MS. And he was medically discharged from the Navy because he had developed multiple sclerosis while he was there. And I take that back. 4 prior of the 6 at that time were military, were SEALs. I don't know if it's from their exposures, or what, because they take a lot of,
Really good
challenges
shots.
in their body as opposed to also their training they go through, which, we ignored the fact that basic training is dangerous. And they're exposed to the same kind of in theater of war kind of exposures that can predispose them to developing what we call, neurotrauma. Instead of calling it PTSD or TBI, it's just neurotrauma that elicits the entire process of inflammation. So with this new tool, we have been monitoring a growing group of people, with the, the Sergeant Fox grant that your organization received, the Mac Parkman Foundation Act, that you were kind enough to challenge us in our technology. And what we're doing is now the neuroinflammatory panel, and we're doing the 28-point biomarker panel. We're doing the treatment that's indicated by the 28-point biomarker panel, and we're monitoring their improvement in their hormones in the brain and the body. And then we're monitoring how effective our treatment is for lowering the inflammation. We just had one of your guys who went from, we use a 10-point scale called a program questionnaire, monthly program questionnaire, which they answered 25 questions relative to how they're doing psychologically, physiologically, and physically. And we had one of your guys who came in, he had a pre-treatment score of 3.8. He designated it. We didn't. 3.8. And then he designates a 7.2. So it went from 38% 38% good to 72% good in 1 month on treatment. And I'm curious to see how well his inflammatory markers have improved. But we know the treatment
That's
works.
1 month of a six or 12-month trial right there. So
Well,
wow.
we're on a 12-month trial. And, the goal is to get everybody to a 10, which is they don't have any more of the symptoms that they came to us with. And that's the ideal goal. And in our population, you were talking about the veterans that I help try to support to the fullest. We've had over 3,000. We've got maybe 1,100 in our program now because they graduate. This is not lifelong treatment. This is get better and graduate. you know?
And that's the big difference. And that's, I mean, when we talk about, so let's discuss a little bit about neuroinflammation. And even though it's been there, why
Mhm.
don't these pharmaceutical drugs work that everybody says? I mean, obviously when you have neuroinflammation, you have mental health challenges, and we're all looking at that. We still do not make the correlation between that and damage to the brain. The damage to
Right.
the brain, a lot of it's being caused by neural inflammation. But
Correct.
when you're mentally ill, they give you all these drugs that just kind of make things worse. Why do we look at mental health like this lifetime chronic disease when you've got people in 1 month that are like, that's almost a 100% improvement going
Improvement,
from
correct.
38 to 7. Yeah. Why,
72.
why do we keep running down this old path? It doesn't make sense.
It's because the way that the world of psychiatry, psychology has been set up is to look at symptomatology, not causation. All I look at is causation because the literature is very clear, and it's getting clearer that when you have inflammation, it shuts off a lot of the chemistry of the brain that makes us function 100 at, for you and I, it's probably 80%, other people it's 100%. But
Um,
yeah, but the point is that they're looking superficial. I mean, the medication that's used masks the symptoms. So you don't see the symptoms, but they never get better. So that's the reason why the chronicity and the longevity in using medication. But if you can pinpoint where the fire is in the brain and you're able to address that fire and put it out, it gives the brain an opportunity to heal, because not until those fires are out can you rebuild that house that burnt down,
mm,
you know? So
okay.
there are some interesting medications out there. Ketamine is one that helps to alter some of the metabolism of calcium, which can cause, when too much calcium goes into the cells, it can cause hyperexcitability, excitotoxicity, can cause damage to nerves and they die. But ketamine only lasts for a short time. There are some SSRIs, which are the serotonin uptake inhibitors, which have some modicum of influence on neuroinflammation. And then they basically look at, okay, let's give ibuprofen. Let's give naproxephene hydrochloride, naproxen. Let's give this stuff. Let's give this. All those drugs help to reduce inflammation, but they have a horrible side effect. And it's another paper that's getting ready to be published. The draft is on my website. It's called The Two Eyes of Hypogonadism. What does that mean in English? The two eyes is a play on your vision to see. Eye number one, ibuprofen. What's the problem with ibuprofen? It shuts off your brain's ability to send a signal to the gonads, female phacal cells, male's Leydig cells, to stimulate testosterone production. What does testosterone have to do with the brain? Well, it turns out that testosterone shuts down four inflammatory markers of the brain: interleukin 1, 1B, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and interleukin 6, while increasing one of the strongest anti inflammatory, interleukin 10. So what happens when you use ibuprofen, Feldene, or any of those drugs in that classification called nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, you actually have a double-edged sword where you're, yes, dropping the inflammation so pain reduces, but at the same time, you're wiping out one of the most important cascades of hormones called steroidogenesis, where it makes the, pregnenolone, progesterone, allopregnanolone, DHEA, DHT, testosterone, estrogen, estradiol, and so forth. And you wipe that out. 35 hormones are generated by that cascade in the brain. Well, 35 plus or minus.
From Motrin, from
Uh,
ibuprofen,
from
which in
ibuprofen,
the military we eat like candy.
800 milligrams,
Eh,
1 to 4 times a
Ra-
day. Yeah,
Ranger candy, man. We eat that
yeah.
stuff like candy.
In 2017, the first article came to my desk from Denmark, which talked about how um, nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories identified under the class that ibuprofen is in, how it shuts off the ability to make testosterone. Well, you remember, testosterone is down at the midpoint to the end of the chain of hormone production. Cholesterol becomes pregnenolone, the mother of all hormones. Down one pathway, it becomes progesterone, then allopregnanolone, then aldosterone, cortisone. And on the other pathway, it becomes DHEA, testosterone, androstenedione, estradiol, estrone, and estriol. And we also know that the importance of estradiol in both males and females is it modifies the inflammatory process under something called MAPK, MAP phosphokinase. It increases phosphorylation, which causes a lot of damage in the brain. I mean, hyperphosphorylation of tau protein is the cardinal sign or finding in Alzheimer's disease, but it's also found in CTE because of the neurofibril tangles, which is from the hyperphosphorylation of tau protein, which holds the tubes in the neurons that transmit acetylcholine. So when you lose that, people with Alzheimer's, they lose acetylcholine in the medication, what is it called? Aricept, is to help improve the availability of the neurotransmitter in the brain, acetylcholine. But if you don't have any acetylcholine in the brain because you can't make it because the inflammation has shut it down, you're using a medication that really has very little benefit. And that's the same thing with SSRIs, which assume that you've got adequate amount of serotonin to block its reuptake so it works in the nerve synapses that communicates nerve to nerve to allow for the signal, hey, I'm happy, to be passed from one neuron to another down to your limbic system, your emotional center. So that's the reason why a lot of the SSRIs don't work, as well as where's the majority of serotonin made in the body? It's made in the gut. 95% is made in the gut. Well, are you aware that the bacteria in our gut help to support that system? And when you've had COVID or a COVID vax or alcohol or certain medication, antibiotics, it wipes out the bacteria in the gut that help to support serotonin production. So that inflammation knocks down those cells, those chemical pathways. So you don't make serotonin that gets into the circulation, that goes up to the brain, and hey, I feel good.
Wow.
So there's a link together to a lot of it. Finasteride, the hair, the stuff for hair, protecting your hair, finasteride, what is it called? Finasteride and durasteride. No, minoxidil is a blood pressure medication. It's Proscar, Propecia, and Anavar. Yeah, Anavar. No, not Anavar. That's a great steroid.
Yeah. So I hear.
Yeah, it is. It's safe and it works very well. The orthopedics used to use it back in the 80s and 90s to help people recover from orthopedic surgery with a lot of cutting of muscle. So there were a lot of benefits from it.
Hey, I need some Anavar for that rotator cuff I just had done, man. That's what I.
No, you know, I've been doing intra-articular injections now only in the knees. I'm moving to the shoulders from my, past involvement in orthopedics for about 14 years, and having some great responses using BPC 157 and thymosin 4 beta, injecting it into knee joint. It was one of my neurologist buddies who had a skiing accident, and their left anterior cruciate and lateral collateral ligament was stretched, and then their menisci were shredded a little bit from the damage, constant clicking and pain. So a day after the injection, I was called and let know that pain was gone. So 10 days later, from the first shot, I went back and gave a second shot. 3 days after that, clicking was gone. So if you look at the science behind BPC 157 and thymosin 4 beta, it accelerates healing in cartilage, ligaments, and also muscle. And if you throw in a little bit of IGF-1 or growth hormone, it really enhances it.
I was on BPC, TB500, and then Samorelin growth hormone. I am probably 2 to 3 months ahead of where I'm supposed to be. Like, I am not even supposed to lift my hands above my waist. I am like it is amazing.
Yep.
We'll talk about, I want to get into those
Okay.
peptides here. No, a little bit, but no. So is this also another reason why men should be on testosterone? You talk about like injectable testosterone or that cascade effects, because I mean we lose it as we get older. It sounds like
Right.
that's just another reason
Yeah. I,
to kind of stay on the stuff, you know?
yeah. I was heavily into injectable testosterone, but because I work with veterans in active military, um, we in 2014 our access to it for our veterans had dropped because there was a DoD statement someplace where they didn't want the vets or the active military to get it because they believed it created them to be a little more aggressive and right. But let me tell you, the
An
reason why
aggressive soldier, heaven
aggre-
forbid.
they were afraid of it, being trigger happy or being losing the ability
Uh,
to discern whether or not to fire or not. But the real issue is in all those people that are out there listening to this or who subsequently listen to this, testosterone alone is terrible on your system because it shuts off the key hormone that regulates 35 hormones in the brain and 35 below the neck. So if you don't add DHEA and pregnenolone, I've got lots of information for many years. I've talked about it on 4 or 5 of the Joe Rogans because it's such an important issue. And fortunately, I'm starting to see clinics where they include it automatically. The whole issue is when you use testosterone or estradiol by itself, it shuts off luteinizing hormone. If you don't have luteinizing hormone, you can't generate the hormones in the brain. There's one of those hormones that is very important, allopregnanolone. And in fact, it's so important that 10 years ago, a pharmaceutical company made it as a medication. And it's to treat depression, anxiety, postpartum depression, and they haven't even talked about its improvement of sleep. So what happens in people who are taking testosterone alone, they lose allopregnanolone. That's why they become aggressive. And there are articles out there, testosterone, allopregnanolone, and aggression. And it says how important this allopregnanolone is. And that's why a medication called Zulrosso, brexanolone, was developed because it's to treat depression, because you're not making enough of allopregnanolone. And as we age,
wow.
we lose that. And that's
Huh.
why some of us become agitated, aggressive. Fortunately, I take my pregnenolone and DHEA every day, 15 to 30 minutes after dinner, and have great sleep because pregnenolone will also upregulate GABA aminobutyric acid, which is the key natural Valium of the brain that helps you to sleep. So when I travel, I go a lot to Southeast Asia to work, and when I come home, there's a little jet lag. I'll take 100, 150 milligrams of pregnenolone an hour before bed for 2 or 3 nights, and I'm ready to go. I'm
You're gone,
functioning.
huh?
I'm back
Wow.
functioning. Yeah.
And you come
And
across those long trips, man, that jet lag will eat you up for a week, man. No
well,
kidding.
17 hours to 20 hours going there, and then 2 hours coming home. Why is it only two
Gosh.
hours coming home? Because I'll leave Bangkok, Thailand at 4:45 and arrive on Sunday. I'll leave 4:45 Sunday. I'll arrive in Los Angeles at 7 o'clock Sunday evening.
It's crazy how those
Like
time.
two
I mean,
hours, right?
I had a company in Australia. I'd leave Friday, get home Friday. It's like
Yeah,
just
right.
it does mess with your noggin,
That's
dude.
time travel. That's time travel.
It
But
is time travel.
yeah. Anyway, what we found in the past, though, since 2019, is that the combination of our treatment protocol with select peptides does phenomenally well. I know I might have already shared with you that my daughter, I have 3 daughters, 2 of them are docs, one of them works with me, Allison, who her specialty is in gut brain, and I trained her in neuroendocrinology over 12 years now. And she takes care of our vets with gut related problems because if you have gut problems, it's not going to allow us to reach 100% in recovery because of all those inflammatory chemicals and the destruction of the serotonin in the gut. The guts generates all these inflammatory chemicals that go into the brain and flip the switches, makes your brain generate the inflammatory chemistry. So you need to fix the gut. So anyway, she has been a great help, and the I don't know where I was going, but anyway, the gut's a very important.
So what do we do to fix? I mean, because it wasn't until I started healing this, I started reading about L-glutamine and it's that
Right.
all that stuff. I had no idea that so much went on in the gut, and the gut's
Mhm.
also heavily impacted by blast exposure by our veterans, right? I mean, you got blast waves coming right through that puppy,
Yep.
right through the brain. And I don't know
Yep.
if you know this, but it wasn't until 2024 they have had a blast code for every organ in the body, your colon, your gut, your heart, your lungs.
Right.
Never had one for the brain until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Any air filled or fluid filled area of the body is prone to damage.
Hmm.
Okay, because of the compression wave, and it's also the transduction, the moving of the gut. Also,
Right.
the brain is affects through the vagus nerve, the gut. So if the brain gets affected, all the 12, main nerves in the brain that go and regulate our body are influenced. We've seen articles where the hypothalamus, which is responsible not only for hormone regulation, but also for heart variability, with respiration, with blood pressure, and also with stimulation of the pancreas to release and control insulin regulation. So these are things that are influenced from the hypothalamus. We've had vets who are on a multitude of blood pressure medication. And when we get their inflammation under control, the number of medications drops. We had a guy on 3, he's now on 1.
The number of
Hypertension.
medications, but a lot of that's because, like you said earlier, they're chasing symptoms, right? They give them these
Right.
drugs, it causes a problem. They got a drug for that, and now they're carrying around a gallon bag of all these 13, 15 medications, and it's
Yep.
just I mean, what you're doing with your so let's talk about your blood panel real quick.
Okay.
I know that it's different than, most panels because you look for, it's a very non-traditional blood panel, I guess, because you're checking for
It,
estrogen or whatever, whatever. So talk about, the genesis of that. And then I want to start talking about the new technology and where the future is going.
okay.
But
Well,
yeah, talk about the blood panel because a lot of people
yeah,
don't know that you're based this on AI and you've done a lot of work on this.
the blood panel took about 14 years to put together, and it was over a course of those years that, in as we saw more and more civilian and military with trauma to their head, we started seeing certain patterns. And to exemplify these patterns, to define these patterns, you had to add certain blood tests to it. And I'll tell you that all the blood tests that we do are in any laboratory. They're not unique. They're not in a specialty lab. They have insulin, they had vitamin D, they've got DHEA, DHEAS, testosterone, free testosterone. They've got IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. They've got insulin-like growth factor binding protein 3. They've got growth hormone levels. These are all commonly found in laboratory. It's just how you read them and how you interpret them. Unfortunately, the majority of us, meaning doctors or healthcare providers, are trained how to read laboratory results like an accountant, line by line by line, never interacting one hormone to another. And I look at patterns, and what I have is analytical skills, nothing else, but analytical skills, and put those together and saw patterns. And in those patterns, we went and tested out the theory based on those patterns, and people got better. Vitamin D was one that people didn't really, look at. But if you look now at vitamin D, there are millions of articles. There are almost 3 million articles, vitamin D and diabetes, vitamin D and heart disease. There were 1.43 million articles talking about vitamin D helping to protect you from COVID and influenza. Now, for some reason, there's only like 800,000 articles. Somehow 600,000 articles disappeared overnight.
I was having a
Somehow.
conversation with a gentleman today that owns a chain, like a 700 store chain of tanning salons, and he got in a huge battle with the CDC or somebody because, they're saying, it gives cancer. He goes,
Right.
why don't we look at what vitamin D does instead of just looking at the bad stuff? I mean, yeah, you can get cancer from water if you drink like 900 gallons of it, but everything gives you
Absolutely.
cancer. But can we just get off the cancer? Look what vitamin, and he brought that up today, man.
Yeah.
So vitamin D does all that.
Well, you're not going to believe this. If you go to Google Scholar and you put in vitamin D and cancer prevention, you'll find 3,050,000 articles. But if you go back and you put in vitamin D and cancer treatment, you'll see 3,380,000 articles. There are more articles as treatment for vitamin D being used for treatment than for prevention. And I mean,
And either way, you win.
blown away, absolutely blown away. But it's not me making the statement. It's the fact that I go to these resources, PubMed and so forth, and you look at the number of articles that have been written on this. It's called Boolean logic, where you look only for articles that have vitamin D and cancer prevention, and all comes up. Okay. I can't tell you that all those articles, the 3,358,000 or 83,000, are all positive towards it, but they're discussing it. And that's a lot more than I would have expected. I ask, when I lecture, before I make the statement on how many articles there are, I'll ask the docs, how many articles do you think there are on vitamin D and cancer prevention? Guy will raise his hand in the front. I was doing a lecture at Loma Linda, and he yelled out, I said, so how many? He said 10. And then I went and showed the screenshot where it showed the 3 million. No, I'd already taken the slide, okay, because I didn't have access. Yeah, and showed it. The same thing with testosterone and dropping inflammation. The same thing with estrogen and dropping inflammation. The same thing with there are 853,000 articles on pregnenolone helping with depression, because it's pregnenolone becomes progesterone, becomes allopregnanolone. And then I get attacked or get addressed. Well, can you prove to me that oral dosing of pregnenolone gets converted to blah, 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 blah? I said, sure. Here's a whole group of articles where that's what they researched. How well does oral, it's a fat soluble, so you take it after food, vitamin D, DHEA, and pregnenolone are fat soluble. So to maximize their absorption, you take them after a meal, 15 to 30 minutes after a meal. So that's why in our treatment protocol, we have a graph or a chart that tells them when exactly to take it to optimize it. And also, if you take things like DHEA, which helps with, it's one of the key things to generate myelin, the coating of nerves, which is what MS patients, CTE patients, everyone with neuroinflammation end up getting Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. And it's because they lose the efficiency of nerve conduction from one neuron to the next.
So let's touch on that a little bit. And this is one of the things that we talk with parents is that until the age of 14, the prefrontal cortex is not myelinated at all. It starts myelinating at 14. It's the last part of the brain to develop. All right. So if our kids are heading soccer balls and getting in contact while their brain is, while this key part of the brain that controls everything we do, the CEO, is unmyelinated, tell our parents what is going on with that developing nerve structure in an unmyelinated state.
Right. That's great point. Great point. The frontal lobe, the executive functions demand a lot of our neurosteroids, which are the pregnenolone, the DHEA, and so forth. In fact, when you look at Alzheimer's patients, their frontal lobe is devoid of all the important neurosteroids. So inflammation will shut it down. So if you have children that are heading the ball, and I think there's laws in a number of states where they can't do it. I know in UK from project I had there, it was 16? I have to wait until 16. I don't know what.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I heard it was it's 12 in most of the soccer leagues now, but still.
Okay. But it should be further on. Yeah. So the parents need to know that the importance of myelin is so that the neurons form correctly so that they can transmit the signals. Myelin is, they say it's a protective coating. No, it's more than that. it forms something called nodes of Ramdier, which allow for the electrical conduction to speed up when you're young. You got to have a really fast electrical conduction because that helps to stimulate the next neuron. But if you have disruption or dysfunction in the myelin coating, you get trickling, so you lose cognitive functioning. You might not have the circuitries all connecting. It's like having a CPU in a computer where the link to your mouse is broken and you try using your mouse and it's not working. Or you try using your microphone and it doesn't. You try using your printer and it doesn't work. Or you try using your
Denny's used to
robotic
that,
arm.
man. My stuff never works.
Okay. So it's extremely important to have it. Now, um, I get into battles with pediatricians and pediatric endocrinologists because their world is, oh, you don't put it in. But if you're deficient, you pulse it in. You don't use it every day, you pulse it. Okay. You use it, pulse it to help the brain, and you use something to help drop the inflammation. And, you know, we only took care of 18 years of age and older patients relative to traumatic brain. And I'd have once a month, twice a month, a mother call me saying their child is, had head trauma and so forth from Pop Warner, from LaCroix, or whatever sport they were playing, or swimming, or soccer, or whatever, that bumped heads, and the kids changed. And they said, "Can't you take care of the kid?" I said, "No, I don't have the technology to do it." And after too many years, we developed a product which was originally earmarked for children called Brain Care 2 that we tested out in our adults, and it works so bloody well. It was with the, all the products get tested in our military groups. The
Yeah.
SEALs, Clear-Minded Energy, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, with the
Good.
medics, and then the Marines out of Pendleton in 2020 with our third key product. So we've tested it, and it works so well in the adults that I won't say I forgot about the kids, but it's available, and it's an anti-inflammatory, no drugs in it. There's nothing that is banned. There's, for WADA, they're just like quercetin, DHA, which is omega fatty acid. It's got I published the 2 volumes of peptides. Hopefully, you got a copy of it. The money from the book on peptides, Peptides for Health, all the funds are being given to my daughter to a new project that she wanted to start, which is Children of Veterans. So we've got a couple of children of veterans who are now in our program, and it's helping to offset expenses for them, if not pay in full. If it's just one of our, like, we have a phase 2 protocol, which spun out of our Marine project in 2020, where no laboratory testing, just fill out this paper, and they get access to a treatment protocol, which we've got now 16,600 some odd people. Of that number, 4,000 are our personal patients. So there's about 12,000 plus that are using. They're not seeing us. They're just accessing the product and following the instructions that we built since 2020. And every time we update it, when we get more results in, because every patient provides us with their improvement every month, every 30 days. Not all do it, but we have a large population that are doing it for us. And for the past, since 2018, we've been monitoring it. And if I have time at the end of every year, I'll collate it and present the raw data. In 2023, we had 840 people. They achieved a 78.3%, were 50 to 100% better at the end of 12 months. And these were people, mostly a little more than half were military. The other half were civilians, with including NFL, NHL, people who have sports-related injuries, motocross, NASDAQ, and so forth. I think it's NASCAR. I don't take care of it. My daughter does. I just get all the data from it. So the laboratory
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
No?
So the laboratory testing we run, we get results, and based on those results is what we treat. So there's no guessing. And my background was computer electronics. My father was Army. He died of multiple myeloma, bone cancer, and that's what sent me into medicine back in 1977. So I've always kept my finger in the computer. So I spent 10 years writing a software package. I went and got my certification from MIT in 2022 because I brought the software to them, to the professors and my classmates, to see what they thought of it. And, they made recommendations. I did it. And then the software is now in 137 clinics in 16 countries. And we just got TGA, which is the FDA for Australia. There are 210,000 Australian veterans. So we now have authorization to use the software for their doctors to use the software to analyze labs because, it took my daughter 18 months face to face with me, which is which is stress for her, not for me.
Father, daughter, yeah. My
She's
daughters
doing
would have
so
made it
well.
18 days, let
Yeah.
alone 18 months, man.
No,
No way.
Allison is just kicking ass. I mean, she's got some really tough cases, really tough cases. The difference between civilian and military, the military, they've got their end goal. They know where they want to be. I find some civilians don't have that, so they don't know what's end goal for them. You know, uh, operation, completed the operation, you know.
And I think that's where, I mean, I noticed that, for the veteran side, man, we can get money, we can get passion. We start talking about kids and athletes, man. It's like, well, yeah, everybody wants to know there's a problem, but the
Right.
passion is like the movement. Yeah, and that's a big thing about you, Mark. I mean, you're acting, all right? Now you're taking 3 million papers that have been out there representing, I mean, just talk about vitamin D, right? 3,500,000. How much research money do those papers represent, right? Probably billions of dollars, right? Billions of
Trillion.
dollars.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what has resulted from that,
Yeah.
right? We
Right.
got a lot of paid off houses and some fancy cars, but did you see a piece of medication? Do you see any improvement? The fact that you right now are identifying a fact and creating, something, right? You're acting. And that is, it's, my hats off to you as always, but it also is kind of a damning, statement on our research community that, and I have this problem with the CTE community. I have this problem with every community. Like right now, the TBI community wants to keep researching TBIs. Like, no, we have got billions of dollars of research. We need to act. We need
Yep.
programs. We need insurance coverage. We need innovation like what you're bringing to the market. And we can't see it as a threat to professions and guilds and all this other stuff that's out there. It's like we are, we're changing people's lives,
Yeah.
and there is a point where these modalities that have been around for TMS, MERT, HBOT that have been out there, and we can't get people care. And then your program and Dr. Lewis's program and the Hero Protocol, where people are looking at supplementing the brain in
Mhm.
order to improve lives. We don't have time to wait on
No,
any more research, man.
no.
We need to move out.
Last year at your summit, I believe he was a SEAL. He lost his son who was a SEAL, Larkin, I think his name is.
Frank Larkin, yeah.
Frank Larkin. He's never responded to me. But anyway, he made a point that was absolutely in all our minds. We've got all this research going on, all these great studies coming out, but no one will come together as a team, as a group, and apply it. It's in research. Now, people come to me and say, "Oh, I hear you doing some great research." I said, "No, I'm not." He says, "What do you mean you're not doing research?" I'm doing clinical application. I started clinical application in 2015 with my partner, Navy SEAL, um, Green Beret,
Don't you
Adam
be
Barr.
mixing up Navy SEALs
No,
and
no,
Green Beret.
it's okay.
No,
I
that's from my SEAL buddy. I guess a
Yeah.
really good
Anyway,
one. Yeah.
Andrew
Yeah.
Marr, Green
Yeah.
Beret EOD in his fourth tour of duty. He was blown up, knocked unconscious for 5 seconds, not a scratch on his body. But 6 months later, he's on 13 medications, full-blown alcoholic and suicidal. His wife, Becky, would call me, say he's in the hall closet in a fetal position, shaking with a sidearm in his mouth. 3 months, he's off everything. 18 months, he and his brother, who's Apache helicopter captain, they write a
Mm.
book. The book gets picked up and made into the movie Quiet Explosions, which tells the story of not only Andrew, but of other veterans who had gone through similar kind of situations. And then through some civilians, Mark Rippon, Anthony Davis from USC, and some a gymnast and the producer's Jerry Shear's husband, who had a heart attack that messed up his brain for 20 years, back to normal. And one of the blessings I had this past year was the gal. If you've seen the movie Quiet Explosions, which is available for free on tubitv.com, um, Julianne Julianne was a gymnast who had multiple head traumas, and when she stopped her gymnast activities, she went to Tulane and not Tulane to Tennessee, and ended up getting her kinesiology lower division credentials, and crashed for 18 months. Long story short, she ended up getting to me, and she had hormone deficiency. We took about 3 years to get her totally perfect, off all medications, her system back on and running. She went to the top endocrinologist in Nashville, and where am I talking about? Where's the main school? Not Tulane. Anyway, so she ends up getting her PhD, off all medication, gets her PhD. She gets married. She has a child. Her son Elliot is born on my birthday. They're
Damn.
very religious people, so they thought it was
There are no
sign.
coincidences. There are
Well,
no
I know that.
coincidences, man.
But anyway, her life is unbelievable right now compared to where she was when I saw her back, back when in 2000 and 2021.
That's
So
amazing.
anyway, the laboratory testing is to find the software. My daughter took 18 months face to face to get acclimated to do what I do. The software does it in a minute. Okay.
So
So any doctor can run the labs, which is available at any laboratory, put the results into the program, spits out a 12-page report with predictive treatment. What is predictive treatment? Based upon the laboratory results, it tells you, it gives you recommendations on what you might consider to do. It's an
and you go
educational tool.
and you go to your website or Walmart or Walgreens and you buy the stuff you need to fix your brain.
Basically, yes. Or go online and get pure encapsulations or life extension, or whatever, as long as it's a
High quality stuff. Yeah.
good quality stuff, and that's it. Some of it
Wow.
you might need some hormone intervention if you're deficient in testosterone, but that's where I was going. I don't use testosterone. I use Clomid and Eclomiphene. Why? Because that's what helps in all the veterans who are toxic from ibuprofen, 800 milligrams. I got a guy, 800 milligrams, 2 to 3 times a day for 11 months.
Yeah. Well, no,
11 months.
I've been there,
His
man.
system was we have markers, LH and free testosterone level, which it was in the pattern, which is classical for NSAID, ibuprofen suppression of testosterone production.
I do agree with you a lot because I don't think if you're still in childbearing, you do not need testosterone until you over 50. You got to have it, man. I mean, it's a life changer, right? I don't know if
Yeah.
you get the same results, but and I don't have to have kids anymore, whatever. But I do agree, man. For these veterans who are still childbearing ages and all that stuff, I think we're giving that stuff out a little bit too
Yeah.
freely right now, and I absolutely agree with what you're doing.
It wipes out their system, wipes out the 35 hormones in the brain, and it causes allopregnanolone to be lost. You become aggressive, agitated, irritable, emotional volatility, can cause insomnia because you lose GABA. I've got, I possibly
I was
told you.
talking to a Division I guy who I was talking to him about, I think it was suicidal ideation, and the name is I'll come to it, but he said, look, I was in a really really bad place. I'm like, how'd you get out? He goes, GABA. He says, I just started taking GABA,
Yeah.
and so here's a quick question for you, Mark. We tell people all this time, it's like, look. You got problems. You've got exposure, RHI, RBE, don't care. You got a mood disorder. You got cognitive decline, whatever. If you're going to try anything, at least balance your brain before you move into whatever it is. It could be, electronic modalities. It could be stellate ganglion blocks. Could be the psychedelics that are out there.
Yeah.
Before you try that, before you go down, or at least while you're going down the road, balance this, make this, what's your point on that? We think it's the most logical starting point for recovery.
Absolutely. Yeah, obviously, you've been listening to a lot of what I've been saying over the past 31 years. Thanks for listening. The, I don't, I've
It's
written,
logical.
yeah, duh, but some people need to have it explained to them. And then you say, oh, that's logical. I'm not a great believer in the use of psychedelics as first run. I think is exactly what you said. You need to fix the chemistry of the brain. And here's where the importance lies. In order for psychedelic assisted therapy, PAT, to work, the brain has to have receptors so that the psychedelic can connect to it. DMT, serotonin 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 1A, 2A. In order for them to work, you have to have the receptors, and then you have to have the support of the neurotransmitters, the acetylcholine, the dopamine, the serotonin, uh, all the transmitters, the AMPA transmitters and receptors. Otherwise, you've got a dysfunctional system. You need to have, it's like you get into what is it? What has 12 spark plugs, like a Lamborghini or something? You get into a Lamborghini expecting to have a great ride, or you get into a Porsche with the 12 plugs in it,
Cylinders, yeah.
and you only have eight plugs, the four missing. How are you going to be able to rev that up, to 12,000 RPMs or whatever it goes to? You're not. The same thing with the brain. You have to have all the cylinders aligned and functioning so that when you add something, it works. That's the reason why even our traditional psychotropic medications, the SSRIs, the whatever, they don't work well because you don't have the circuitry, you don't have the receptors that'll recognize it and function with it, or the ability to increase serotonin. So I agree with you wholeheartedly that first thing you need to do is fix the brain. I'm starting to get some feedback from people I've trained in the years who are saying, it makes logical sense. You need to fix the foundation. I mean, try building, a house on top of dirt without a cement or a slab,
So let's go back to the test you talked about earlier. We never got to that, man. Why is this so exciting to you? Why is this test there's something you've been looking for a long time?
The reason is it gives us reproducible objectivity. In the science world, you need to have objectivity and not just a person saying, oh, it looks like it's due to inflammation. Now I have categorically a panel of 20 markers that if I do before treatment and they're elevated, not all of them. I just had a guy with one of your guys, 13 out of 20 was elevated. And in 2 more months, I'll do a secondary test and see it suppressed. So why does it suppress? It suppresses because of what he's on. What does that mean? It means our treatment protocol is working. If it doesn't work, it means that maybe they need more of whatever it is we're giving them based upon their labs. I was in Miami 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and I gave a lecture, which is going to be posted on one of my sites, which is called The Fallacy of Clinical Laboratory Reference Ranges, which means that laboratory blood testing that we do, if let's say hypothetically testosterone has a range of 10 to 100, and you come in at 11, since you're within that 10 to 100, your traditional doc is going to say you're normal. But you say to the doc, but at that number, I don't feel good. And the doctor says, well, you've got a normal testosterone level. You're telling me you're not feeling well. You got to be depressed. Here, take an antidepressant. Well, it turns out I have this conversation quite often. And what has come out of that is that over the past 31 years, we've correlated when people are at the best. And it turns out to be at the 50th to 75th percentile of the range of your laboratory. Otherwise, a laboratory range has nothing to do with health. It's a statistical population-based number, meaning that you've got 100 people in a room, you take their blood for testosterone, its ranges from 10 to 90. So If you're within 10 to 90, you're in the two standard deviations. Yeah, the lower 2.5 percentile is abnormal and the upper 97 and above is abnormal. Statistics. I never liked it, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, if you're in the middle and upper 2/3, that's where we see the greatest. How does anyone figure it out? You go look at your lab report, you see the reference range, it has your results and then the reference range, and you take the lower number, add it to the upper number, and divide it by 2. You should be at that number and 25% above that. That is where we find optimal. And our software, the Millennium Office Laboratory Assistant, it looks at quartiles, which is there's lower 25%, the next 25, 0 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, 75 to 100. The 50 to 75 is where all our regular patients are on. All our neurodegenerative cases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, CTE, PSP, and so forth, they're at 75 to 100%. They need more to counteract the damage that's already been done or to suppress the damage and to give the brain the ability to recover. It's like try growing roses in an acidic soil. It's not going to happen. In an acidic, inflammatory brain, you can't get your systems to kick in something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps to rekindle, regenerate neurons and so forth. This is how we've been able to take stroke patients and reverse their symptomatology. In fact, my daughter's father-in-law had a stroke and he was wheelchair dependent when he got out of the hospital 6 weeks later. Immediately started him on the 28-point biomarker panel and one peptide. And what happened was the nurse 3 weeks later at the end of, he came home February 11th. So it was the beginning of March, end of February. The nurse from the hospital came in to assess him for physical therapy. She dropped it. She finds him walking without a walker, without a wheelchair, without a cane, without anything. And he's already been to the bar with his son and daughter. And this is the benefit of brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
How do we change this, Doc? I mean, how do we change this? So we got Robert Kennedy up in the administration. He's kind of shaking it up a little bit. I mean, we've got you're one of a large number of innovative capabilities that are out there that aren't our medical population is not aware of them. They're not aware of how to use them. They're not even aware of the causality of a lot of the mental illness that they're seeing.
Correct.
You're like, what's it take? We've got this. I mean, I'm not going to say an entrenched, adverse population of medical practitioners, but we have got to open the aperture on these modalities. I mean, the cost savings, the economic impact of fixing the brain. I just explained this to a guy the other day. We can look at chronic disease, obesity, diabetes, pancreatic cancer. I don't care. There is not an organ in the country, in the body, that if you're going to attack and fix, if you fix the brain, the economic impacts of that, and not only that, just the quality of life impacts that we are talking about are massively, massively outshine anything else that can be attacked right now from a medical perspective, if you ask me. And yet we know more about outer space than we know about this organ right here.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we get people to understand how important it is? I mean, I didn't think anything about it until my son ran off a cliff.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, holy shit, dude, we treat this organ like it's a baseball. Like it's like, yeah, it's going to keep functioning. I can just beat the hell out of it. I'm good, And we don't attribute that. If you heal the brain, you can heal like almost all these chronic diseases, obesity, everything we're talking about. You can solve that just by treating the brain, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Part of the problem that I've experienced in the past 31 years that I've been doing this, and then with the military for 18 years, the problem is no one really cares or really wants to understand what it is that needs to be changed. The paradigm needs to be changed. It's not about, here, take this blue pill, this green pill, at 4 o'clock, take the orange pill. It's about not masking and cover up the symptoms. It's by causation. And it's so much easier to just hand someone a pill than it is to go and understand. Now, it's taken me, I've been 46 years in medicine, 31 years has been focused on this issue alone. And that's why now I've started writing the articles based upon the science that I've accumulated and the results we've seen. But to find the avenue to bring it to people like Collins in the DoD, or veterans, uh, health, and backdoor aspects I have to getting some of our papers to RFK Jr., who would be great. I've sent things monthly to Hegseth. I've sent them to everybody in Washington and so forth. But no one wants to listen to someone who doesn't have a presence on radio, television, or someone like a Dr. Oz presenting them, or Dr. Phil, or someone of that nature. I was at a program, a celebrity golfing program that had some people that uh, listened to me for 15 minutes, understood. I gave them a copy of the movie. And I said, if it makes sense to you, help me. Okay. I generate funds. I work 24/7, generate funds to help our veterans and active military to come into the program so it's comfortable for them. We've had some people that we've paid for a year of it. You're helping to pay for up to 50 people to come in through Mac Parkman Foundation, which I deeply appreciate. I look at it as proof of concept, because you're connected to the right people in Florida. I mean, I've got people I presented in front of 3 congressmen in the state of Texas, where I spend more of my time, or most of my time, and it's falling on deaf ears. So you just got to find someone who truly cares. As I said in the beginning, it's about people
Yeah.
caring. I don't ask for money. Joe Rogan's been absolutely phenomenal in helping us along, both with exposure. Every time we get exposed, we get a lot more civilians coming in and more military coming in. So the funds we get from the civilians, we help with that. And we develop products to help. And the product that we developed and had the Marines in Camp Pendleton test out is our flagship, because just using that product, people have gotten better.
And
So
the key is too is that people have to understand you're not saying take my stuff forever. Take my stuff until you're better, and
correct.
then go live your life, right? I mean, and that is a wildly different perspective on the supplementation market's out of control. We know
Right.
that, right? And it's like buy this now and use it for if you don't use it for the rest of your life, you're going to be back here. No, you're saying, hey, let's treat your brain, get you off this medication. And when you don't need me anymore, you don't need me anymore. Just go live a good life. And guess what? I'm always here. If you start
Yeah.
struggling, you
Right.
come back, right? We take some more tests, and it's
Well,
just
I don't do testing anymore, because in the past year, 12 to 18 months, we've had a number of our veterans from 2018 who have come back to us. Why have they come
Mm.
back to us? They've had subsequent traumas. They've had
Yeah.
subsequent head traumas, car accident, an assault, some police officers, some guys who are civilian.
Oh, first
uh,
responders are completely ignored as a population when we talk
Correct.
about this stuff.
And we added our first responders to our funding,
Man,
so fire department, police department, um,
thank God they are
we
they are
National
hurting,
Guard,
man.
we take care of National Guard, Coast Guard, just like we do. If they wore the uniform from whatever branch, we cover them. Okay.
Man,
So
amazing.
that is it. And anybody out there who's interested in more information, you can get in touch with me. And I'm just looking for help to get a higher level of recognition of the product. I want to give this. I mean, I had David Shulkin, who was during the first administration of Trump. He called me on a Sunday after he saw the movie Quiet Explosions. He called me on a Sunday. I mean, I knew who he was because I was watching the battle he and Trump were having about um, making um, making the VA into a privatized system. Okay,
That's
he was
something Trump
against
would
it.
say, yeah.
He was against it. Trump was for it. So he left, but he called me. We had a great conversation, and he asked me what were 3 wishes I would have, and the 3 wishes were: get me into any military base in front of their surgeons, and let me start the process of training them. I've made it even easier. I spent a year, 3 years ago, writing an entire system online so people can go and access our training. It's 16 hours of training, which is the first level, and they read the book, which is TBI, Clinical Approach to Diagnosis and Treatment, and read that, and then start seeing cases. And then we help support them. We give them access to our software. I want to hand the software over to, to the military.
No
So
reason why
all
it
our
can't be licensed. Yeah.
no, I mean, I'm trying to make it as easy as possible, so they can acclimate to it. And they don't need to be endocrinologists. Yes, to learn the information so they can be more thorough at the understanding is ideal. But as I said, we have 137 clinics. We've got Dr. Demaya, who's a psychiatrist in Punta Gorda, just south of you in Tampa. And she came to us almost 5 years ago, traditional clinical psychiatrist, and she wasn't doing what she thought she should be doing, fixing people. She came to us, she got trained, was one of the first people to use our software, license the software.
I'm going to tie
And
you up with my daughter. She's a psychological pain she's a psychological drug management specialist. She's always looking for ways to get these kids off
well,
these crazy drugs, but you got to make them feel better first, right?
correct. And
Yeah.
it turns out we've had 2 veteran heroin addicts who woke up and got off their heroin. One of them ended up with Marcus Luttrell in Texas, in Magnolia, Texas, on his podcast explaining it. And he called me to say, "Can I tell him what you did?" I said, "Fine, go." And he ended
Yeah.
up with Robert Kennedy telling him the same thing, but it hasn't made any movement for us. But
Yeah.
you fix the inflammation, you fix the pain. There's an inflammatory chemical called peroxynitrite, which I did a presentation for Walter Reed and Georgetown University in 2023 with Andrew Marr being there, about um, neural pain, neurotropic pain, where the brain generates it because of this chemical, peroxynitrite, which is an inflammatory chemical. And if you shut that chemical off, you can use melatonin, you can use a couple of other things to shut it down, but you have to address it. And when you address it, the pain levels go down because it's being generated by the brain.
Doc, I mean, we obviously got to make some moves here, but as we go forward, so
Mhm.
tell people as we close down, tell folks how do they find you,
Right,
right? If they're interested in treatments, your research books,
right.
and the new tests, So where how do they get a hold of you, and what else do you have going on? I mean, you got a million things going on. I mean, I love your peptide book, dude. So what else do you got? Let people know what's going on, how they
Well,
find it.
the best way, if for educational purposes only, under TBI, help now, one word, .org. You can go to that website, and under the science, you can see the articles that I've published. You can see the articles that are pending publishing. See articles that I use to change my view of what's going on in the brain and how to fix it. Then the store is millenniumhealthstore.com, where you can pick up the book, as well as all of our proprietary products are there. And then there's a automatic discount for newcomers there, which just keep on using to get the discount. This is how I generate funds for our veterans program. Those people who would like to become a patient, my daughter takes care of all civilians. I take care of the military. If you go to tbihelpnow.org and go to the TBI team, there's a place where you can click to enter in your information, and it'll be sent to us. And then you'll be sent to fill out a form application and for enrollment. And thanks to Joe Rogan, my last time with him, January 23rd, it generated extra funds, so we have additional funds to help our civilians as well.
Ah,
Just ask.
really?
Yeah.
That is amazing, man. I mean,
Look,
now
it's not about making money and buying scotch. Thank God I've got enough friends who know the scotch I drink, and every year I get a couple of bottles, which I'm not drinking as much. But it's about the only way that I'm going to get the work that we've done,
get
uh,
it, Bill.
the impact
Need
is
buzz.
to get exposure. So Andrew and I started this groundswell. So it's grassroots, and the only way you can do grassroots is make it so it's affordable. If there are people who want to find out if their inflammation is where it's at, uh, beginning of May, we'll have on our Millennium Health Store, you can actually access the laboratory test. You purchase it there. It includes a consult with it. We are not taking physician responsibility. All we're doing is getting you the exam done, interpreting it, getting you the documents, and you can bring it to your doctor. On my website, you can read about the phase 2 protocol under the science, under tbihelpnow.org, the science, and it has the entire protocol for phase 2 protocol, which you can also read the 2020 Marine study that it was developed from. So it's all there. It's all there. Make it as easy as possible. Funding, so forth, discount. Okay.
Well, Doc, let's talk about that. And I know this is more fun than being on Joe Rogan. And when I get on Rogan one day, I'll be talking about your stuff. So anyways, look, I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show. You're an amazing guest. And, dude, you're just a wealth of knowledge. You're doing so much for our veterans. And I know you care about everybody that's out there. So
absolutely.
Look, thank you so much. We'll absolutely invite you back to the summit this year. If you want to show up and give you It's September 16th and 17th. Look forward to having you there. And
I'll put it on my calendar.
A lot of good stuff going on. So, absolutely. Mark, you take care of yourself, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Take care.
My pleasure. Folks, another amazing podcast, man. I love this guy, man. He's doing so good, much good out there. And if you haven't learned anything yet, well, keep following him. Go to his website. Check this man out, man. He's making a difference in a lot of lives. Matter of fact, he's helping me with a young man right now that is absolutely replicating what my son went through. And I cannot wait to see what happens from there. But folks, if you like this podcast, please share it, like it, spread it out there amongst you out there. We're trying to get to 3,000 viewers, man, so we can, promote the message that this is the largest preventable cause of mental illness in this country. My son and thousands of other young men and women should still be here, and hundreds of thousands more should no longer be suffering in silence. We just got to make some basic changes. So go to our website, get the book just revised. I added another 50 pages of stuff to it. Sorry, but we had to get some new information out there. It'll be in Spanish here next month as well. Go to the App Store, get our Head Smart app, amazing app, with the only app out there with repetitive head impact information out there for it. And then don't forget our summit, September 16th and 17th of this year. And remember, you only got one melon, man. Please take care of that thing. Understand how important this organ is, not only for you and your child. You hear somebody that's suffering, having a problem, send them to the Mac Parkman Foundation, and we'll get them out to our network to include Mark Gordon so they get the treatment they deserve. Till then, thank you so much. And this is goodbye from Broken Brains with Bruce Parkman, the official foot podcast of the Mac Parkman Foundation. We'll see you next time on Broken Brains. Take care.